This story is about the first and last time I ever drove for Uber. So I received a pickup location in a small part of New York City. It's a quite crowded place, so I felt pretty safe about it being my first ride. When I approached the destination, there is a man dressed in very filthy clothing next to a woman who is dressed up quite like what I would call a prostitute, and she seemed to be unconscious on the bench beside him. As I pull up, he picks her up underneath her arms and starts to flag me down. He drags her up to the car, and before I can even protest, he opens up the door and throws her in. He sits down beside her and quite fidgety tells me where to go. The whole time he keeps telling me about how he will need help getting his friend out of the car, and that she has had way too much to drink tonight. Also, there will be an extra $20 tip inside for you. At this point, I'm literally scared quite to fucking death, and I truly tell him, once we get there, open the door, get her out of my fucking car, and do not fucking look back. As we pull up to the destination, he has not said a word for the last 10 minutes. He opens up the door and just quietly slides out of the car. She gets up behind him on her own and walks out the car, looks at him, looks at me, and said, "I truly would have loved to play with him." To this day, I don't know if it was a weird sex fetish, but in the back of my mind, I know what it was. They were going to rob me and kill me, which it happens all the time up here.
Here's my worst rider so far. I drive in Dallas, usually on Friday and Saturday nights. About 1 AM I get pinged for a pickup on McKinney Avenue downtown. I was going to just shut down and go home, but surge was 3, so I figure maybe I'd get lucky with a long trip to Plano or someplace. I fight through the traffic, which is always terrible, and pull up to the bar. Put my flashers on, but no one comes over. Text the rider and look to see someone pulling out their phone. I see an early 20-something blonde girl pull out her phone. She's absolutely wasted. I get out and call her name. She looks at me and promptly falls down. A guy helps her up and he's feeling her up whilst he's at it. I walk over, tell him to take a hike and help her to my car. Put her in the backseat and it's clear that she is beyond wasted. She's also wearing a little jumper and falling out of it. I put the seatbelt on her and ask her for the address. She's practically incoherent but gives me her address. At this point, I'm wondering if she's been slipped something. I drive her to the address, which is uptown, about 5 minutes away, and stop. She's passed out in the back seat and reeks so badly of alcohol, it's nauseating. I help her out and she falls into the street. I pick her up and walk her to the door of her apartment building. She's struggling to get her keys out of her bag and she kind of leans back into me with her butt on my thigh to keep her balance. She can't make her key work, so she buzzes her roommate. We're waiting for her roommate to come down and open the door. And it was then that the leg of my jeans began to feel wet. Yep, she pissed all over my leg, down into my sock and shoe. I help her roommate get her to the elevator, say goodbye, and head back out to my car. When I get to the car, I say fuck it, and take off my shoes, socks and pants. I ball them up into a plastic bag I had in the car, and put them in the back.
I have used Uber many times in the past, so to start this story off, I will tell you I've never been nervous to use it. But now, after my last ride I have ever took with Uber, I am quite terrified to ever use it again. I was in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, when I had contacted them. After the longest wait of my life, it felt like on the side of an old country road, a man pulls up to pick me up to give me a ride. He doesn't say a word as I walk up to the car, but I see the symbol in the front. and I know that this is him. I get into the back seat and tell him where I want to go. Without a word, the man just drives off. Halfway through the ride, he looks at me while I have made small talk with him with no response, so I decided that the man just didn't want to talk. When he stares at me, he says, "I know a shortcut to get where you're going, and I would really love to show it to you." I'm just so ready to get the fuck out of here. I tell him any way is cool with me. Let's just get there. Halfway through the ride, he begins to talk again, but this time he seems more excited and playful, which allows me to relax and talk back to him more excited and playful. That was a very, very bad mistake. He pulls out a Smith & Wesson nickel-plated .38 revolver and holds it up over his head and asks me, "Would you like to shoot a gun?" At this point, I am so fucking scared. I have $500 on me because it was just tax time, and I am not coming off of that shit. He turns around and tells me that he would like to pull over pretty soon and allow me to shoot the gun with him. I pretty much know what's going on here. Alabama, back road, countryman with a gun. I'm ready to note the fuck out. At this point, I'm looking at the speedometer to see how fast we're going. We're going 37 miles per hour. I think about it for a minute, and I realize that the option of jumping out of this moving vehicle would be a lot better than to stay in. Have you ever jumped out of a car going almost 40 miles per hour before? It feels just like it sounds, jumping out of a car at 37 miles per hour. I open up the door. He protests and says, "What the fuck are you doing?" At this point, I'm just hoping that I don't get sucked underneath the tires as I eject myself from the vehicle. Just like some badass Bruce Willis from a Die Hard movie, I roll across my back and shoulder and hit my feet and continue to run. It's amazing how fast you can get to your destination when you are driving off pure adrenaline. So, in the famous words of most Reddit posts, Uber driver from Alabama, let us not meet again.